Welcome to the Art of We podcast. Today we are doing a follow up to last week's episode, which was about how to start a conversation about negative impact. So that was really about how do I even start the conversation about something that might be a harder conversation to have. And today we're going to dive in to more of the feedback portion of a conversation where it might be a sensitive topic that you need to address with your partner. You might have places where you don't align with each other. There might be something that has been bugging you about your partner or their way of being or their habits that they have for a while and you're ready to address it. Maybe you see possibility for how your partner can show up in a different way in their life that might be a more empowered way or a more sovereign way. There's a lot of different reasons why you might want to give your partner feedback, but the main thing that I want to stand for is viewing feedback as a really essential part of being in a healthy and thriving partnership. And if we're not giving each other feedback, we're not really standing for their full success and our full success as partners. I'm curious what your thoughts are, Will.
I agree. I think another way to say it is I think we're often holding on to a false sense of peace or not wanting to bring up something that could cause a rupture, or we're avoiding conflict, usually at the cost of the full expression, as you say. So these are not easy conversations, and they're sometimes not fun conversations, but sometimes growth and pushing ourselves to be the best we can be is not fun or easy. So Krista had a great idea of giving people some very straightforward steps to take in this process.
Well, it comes from you and I practicing a lot. And what I love about beginning to see feedback as an essential part of a partnership is that it starts to become a thing that becomes a lot easier. And I think that for you and I, let me know how you feel about this. I think that we've gotten to a place where we can deliver feedback to each other in a way that really does feel like we're supporting each other's success versus there's something wrong or you need to change or I'm shaming you or I'm blaming you and that kind of thing. Not to say that we don't have those impacts unintentionally sometimes, but I think that it seems like we've gotten to a place where we're pretty good at it.
Exactly. I think you're right. It comes with practice that we get better at any skill. So I think some of the big difficult periods people go through in their relationships often come from a buildup of not having these conversations that we're talking about today.
So we're going to model this around a topic. I have some feedback for you. Will, are you open to receiving some feedback today?
I'm nervous to do it live. This is not rehearsed, but I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay, so I'm going to model it. And first, I want to say that I think that one way to really support the conversation is to really take a stand for what you're wanting for your relationship. So you bring in a little bit of context of why you're bringing this conversation forward. So I would say to you, which is true, Will, I so love doing this life with you. Like I feel grateful every single day that we get to do this life together. And it's so fun to get to collaborate with you on so many levels. And I feel your support in dividing and conquering the different parts of life that we have to tend to in order to be able to do as many things that we do in our lifetime, in our days, in our weeks. I want to have a conversation with you because I think that there's a way that we can optimize this even more together. And I'm wondering if you're willing to have that conversation with me, which might include a little bit of feedback about how we're doing it together. Are you open to having that conversation with me?
Yes, I'm open to it.
Okay, so just to take a bird's eye view here. So basically, I'm like telling you how much I care about you and our partnership, and I can see that it can be refined and even better for both of us. And I'm asking for your explicit permission to engage in the conversation with me.
Yeah,
And I could
it
always do
feels a
that
lot.
better.
Well, it feels different over here. The impact of you asking permission, consent to discuss, certainly feels better from my point of view than what often happens in relationship is there's so much pent up pressure or frustration or what have you that it just comes at you without really any warning or uh, or request. So
Yeah, and that happens to us. And I want to keep getting better at it.
you do a great job at it. I don't have a lot of examples in my pocket of that happening with you. There are a few, but
What about the dry
in general,
cleaners
you do a great
incident?
job.
We did an
We
episode
covered
about.
that before.
We can link that in the notes. It was an episode about something where I did not, well, you two, address a conflict that we had very skillfully. Okay, so yeah, so I just did those two things. Now you're open to this conversation. And then the next step that I'm going to do, I'm going to state the facts that happened. So here I go with that. We decided to get a hot tub, which we both were very excited to get. It's a saline hot tub, which means that if it's kind of like a chemistry set in the beginning where we need to figure out exactly how it works. And there's a lot of details to it. It's seemingly a lot of details. The manual is like 100 gazillion pages and all of this. And so, anyway, I'm saying to you, when we got the hot tub, we didn't actually say, okay, Will, you're in charge of the chemistry set of figuring this out. But it seemed like you stepped in and started to take that on. And from my perspective, I remember asking you if you need any help in it and if you're reading the directions to make sure that we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's and doing it right, because it's a significant purchase that I think both of us really want to care for. And you, from my experience, were saying, yes, 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 got it taken care of. No problem. Reading the details. It's all good. And I was like, great. I don't have to worry about it. And we're all good. And you can teach me sometime how to, measure the sticks and measure the different components and that kind of thing. So that's how I remember us getting the hot tub. I'm wondering, in terms of just how it happened and what happened so far, is there anything that you remember differently to that story? I think it's important to check with you
Yeah.
to make sure we're on the same page about the quote unquote facts of what's happened so far, because I'm not into the feedback
Oh,
part
for
yet.
sure. For sure. I would just add that there's, well, first of all, yes. And I did read the directions in my own, probably half-assed way. But there's also a piece that we didn't talk about before. I don't think, maybe you knew this, maybe not. But for a number of years, I had a hot tub that I maintained with the strips and the pH and the chlorine and all the things. So it wasn't like my first rodeo with a hot tub. This is definitely my first saline hot tub. But anyway, the point being that I was also relying in my mind on previous experience of being able to get the hang of the chemistry. So
Was your
yes, you're
last
right.
hot tub a saline hot tub?
No.
Okay, so yeah, a little bit different, but I didn't know that you were relying on that history. But anyway, the facts of getting the hot tub, you kind of implicitly started taking care of it. I was like, okay, great. I think you have it handled. You're like, yeah, that all kind of makes sense to you. Okay. So we're on the same page about that. So the second step that I'm going to take here is to share my experience of what happened after that. And then I want to check in with you to see your experience, if there's any resonance around my experience, around how it unfolded and the story I'm making up about it. So basically, you left out of town, and I was like, okay, I forgot to ask Will how to figure this out, so I'm going to read the directions and figure it out. And I did that, and what I was realizing was that it seemed to me by reading the directions that there actually was a few things that got missed that seemed important to me, like washing out the filter once a week, um, having an auto clean cycle, just little things that had me wake up to the story that you actually didn't totally have it handled in the way that I thought you had it handled. And the impact on me is that I was kind of in this like, oh, like here we go again. Like I trust Will with the details of something. This is kind of comes up around the household a little bit. I think that it's more of a household thing that I'm trusting you with the details. I think you have it handled. And then I wake up one day and I feel like you don't have it handled. And the impact is like I can't rely on Will to handle details when it comes to household stuff. And that's the story I made up based on this particular incident. It kind of related to historical incidents also. So yeah, so I just want to check in with you. This is the next step. What's your experience in hearing my experience? And does any of my story resonate with you that it's hard for you to handle the details when it comes to complicated things like this?
Well, I think you're right that that is not my strongest area of capability. Is when something becomes routine, it gets really boring for me usually. So I think that I'm working against that in my psychology when there's, routine things that need to be done on a regular basis that are just about maintaining something. I think that's true.
This feels also a little bit like more of the like reading the manual to set the thing up. Kind of like, I guess I'm curious if there's a part of you who doesn't like to do that, because we haven't talked about that. Like, doesn't like to go through the steps listed when something gets started or kicked off or we're learning something new.
I think it's more of a learning style thing for me. I think it's more like you seem to have a learning style which I think is great, the learning style you have of reading the manual, figuring it out, doing the steps, getting coaching if you need it, guidance, and then doing the thing. And I think my preferred way of learning is by trying it out without any help or any manual and learning from there. I just think about like even things that are important to me, like I like riding my bike, right? And I think about like maintaining my bike. And I never went and read a manual or watched a YouTube video about like how to adjust my derailleur. I just, turn some screws and see what happens. And if it makes it worse, then I do it the other way. And, just sort of like that's how it lands in my mind to do it the right way is by doing it the wrong way. And that's probably not a very efficient way to learn, but it sticks with me longer than if I read a manual and then go do something. I don't know if that makes any sense.
I think the learning style definitely makes sense. I mean, there's something about that that I really appreciate about you is this kind of explorer part of you who wants to figure it out himself. I think that in this case, the downside of that is that I think that that you had the hot tub chemistry handled when it wasn't handled, like it wasn't figured out yet, and you thought that you had it figured out. And am I wrong about that? That you thought
Well,
you had it figured out?
when I left town, the strips were showing that there was enough of everything in there. The chlorine was a little low, which is where I wanted it to be, but otherwise the strips were checking out. I wasn't using the saline feature the right way. That's true. That's for sure. I didn't check that out. I didn't learn that, but yeah, I mean, to your point, I wasn't using the feature the way at all. I wasn't using the saline feature. And that's what we bought the hot tub for, is so we wouldn't have to use as much chlorine. And you're right that I wasn't taking the filter out and rinsing it every week. That's for damn sure. And that was a
Right.
mistake.
It was in the manual. I think what I'm wanting to be known, I think there's two things here. I want to be known in my experience of this frustration around thinking something's handled and it's not. I guess another thing that's coming up for me is another agreement that we've had is when we go to bed, you agreed to take on checking the doors to make sure they're locked before bed.
Hmm.
And it's been a continual, in my experience, it's been a continual, like, not happening consistently. And sometimes you say the doors are locked, and then I have to go out into the kitchen for whatever reason, and I see that the door's not locked. And it's this like there's detail in that too, and there's tracking in that. And the impact on me is that I feel like I have a hard time being able to rely on you around these details that are very important to me to make sure that we're maintaining the quality, safety, health, optimization of how we're doing this together so that there's not a skanky hot tub. There's not a weird thing that happens in the middle of the night where a door blows open and the alarm goes off and then all of a sudden like it's chaos or something like that doesn't feel good to my system. So I think I'm wanting to be known in that and cared for in that. And the feedback that I'm trying to give you is that I'm having this experience as a result of these things.
Well, first of all, I hear your frustration, and I definitely am not wanting to contribute to you not feeling like you can trust me. That's definitely not something I want to cause in you with my actions. And I think what we haven't figured out yet is how to honor your way of doing things and my way of doing things and come to some kind of collaboration around that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think what's happening is there's a dynamic here between us that we haven't really talked about much yet that is quite different in terms of like how you approach things and that routine things and maintenance things and learning about the house things and how I do it. And so I think there's some younger part of me that's in resistance to subordinating to your way of doing it and is not on board with the view that somehow I'm not keeping a commitment with you. That is your way of doing it and not our way of doing it.
This is juicy because I'm getting a little bit activated. So my commitment to you is, okay, I'm noticing I'm getting a little bit activated, calling that out to you so that it doesn't take me over and I'm not letting that lead me. But for the sake of this episode, I think we should take a quick break. And then when we come back, we can talk about this activation. We can talk about this misalignment and how we're doing things. And actually, the fourth step, which I was going to talk about, is how do we close the gap? How do we get more aligned in our differences so that we can move forward in a way that feels really good to both of us? So let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll care for all that. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay, we'll be right back. We hope you're enjoying this episode. I want to take a quick break to let you know about a gift we created for you and your partner. We compiled our top 10 relationship agreements, agreements that have been so powerful in supporting the success of our partnership that we even turned them into our wedding vows. These agreements help us stay connected, growing, and thriving as a couple, and they've been critical to help us create a kind of we that's way beyond what we've ever experienced before. You can download this free gift at KristaVanderveer.com. That's KristaVanderveer.com. Also, if you enjoy our podcast, it would be so meaningful to us if you left us a rating and review. Not only does it help others find us, but it gives us critical feedback on how we're doing. Thanks in advance, and now back to the episode. Okay, welcome back. I just want to bring in one of our agreements here, which is to stay in the conversation. So there's a couple threads here that I want to stay in the conversation with you, and we're practicing here together, modeling how we do that in a certain way. And staying in the conversation means that we don't kind of leave any tails or threads uncompleted. And so I'm hearing there's a couple of things. One is that you feel, and this is actually part of the conversation here, is reflecting back to each other to make sure we're really hearing what the other person is saying. So what I'm hearing is that you don't want to subordinate to my way of doing things. You feel that we have a difference in styles, which I agree with that. And you feel like you don't want to, like you have to do something that you don't want to be doing. The flavor of that. And I think that's where I started to get activated. Am I hearing you right about those things?
Well, it wasn't, I don't want to be doing things I don't want to do. It was that I want for us to have a deeper conversation about how to come to a collaborative agreement about these details.
Okay.
That I think is going to help me get more on board with consistency and doing the things that need to be done.
Okay. So in hearing that, I'm listening generously and assuming that when you agreed to lock the doors at nighttime, you felt like that wasn't a collaborative conversation enough, because that's something that we talked about and you agreed to. Is that what you're saying?
Saying that, I think it's not the majority of my being here, but there's a part of me that goes along to get along in a situation like that of, you know, this is something that Krista really wants, it's something she really needs. This is how the story goes in my head, which is probably not true, but there's a story in there of there's no room for collaboration here. There's no room for coming to an agreement that's different from verbatim what you're asking for and what you need. It's like a yes/no question.
Well, that would make sense to me, that then if you're feeling that way, that you don't always follow through on, for example, locking the doors at nighttime, as you have this conflicting part of you and you're not actually fully on board with it. All parts of you are not on board with locking the doors at nighttime. So Even though you said yes to it, I'm hearing that you're not actually a full yes to that. You've been going to get along. Am I hearing you right?
I mean, if I'm really honest with myself, I have a question of like, is that really necessary? Do we really need to lock the doors? We're not living in New York City or, some environment, fortunately for us, that, there's a lot of crime or this or that. We do have big wild animals that roam around this area. So it wouldn't be great to find a bear in the kitchen or something like that.
Yeah, which actually happened to happen when you were out of town. Thank goodness I locked the front door because the bear would have been in our house and I would have been alone with the dogs, and that would have not
Shit.
been fun.
No, that would be bad. That would be bad.
Well,
I think there's some kind of like it feels like it's not about you and me. I mean, I'm sure there's a you and me part of this, but if I dig a little deeper into my psychology, I find a part of me that wants to say, look, it's having the doors closed is enough. I don't see, you know, but then I'm like, well, that bear tried to he tried to work on the numeric pad on our front door. So just having a doorknob that's closed isn't going to keep the bear out. So
the other question that I would like you to try on for this moment is also out of curiosity, and there's no right or wrong answer, is what does the we need? And there's two things here. There's one about the details of the hot tub, and the second topic that's arose from this conversation are about locking the doors. What does the we need in relationship to these things?
I mean, the dogs need to be safe, and they go crazy when they hear somebody, even if it's a guest, who's welcomed by us. They get loud and wild. So, and they wouldn't be safe if there was an animal in the house.
Yeah, I probably
So
wouldn't be safe either.
right.
I love that you care for the dogs. Yeah, you sound like me.
Uh-huh. So I'm seeing in this conversation now there's some holdouts in my mind that have not been brought fully in by me
Mm-hmm.
to our we. They're relating to these snags with the hot tub and the doors from a historical point of view. Right. I did fine without doing that in the past. I did fine living in a home without the doors locked or maintaining a hot tub without hosing out the filter and so forth and so on.
You had a skinky hot tub?
I did have a skanky hot tub.
It was? Okay. Who wants a skinky hot tub?
I not only had a skanky hot tub, but I had a heater, a furnace for it that was dedicated for the pool and the hot tub where I lived before. That didn't work right, and I couldn't get. It was really remote area, and I couldn't get anybody to come work on it. So I would do these crazy things like turn the gas on in the furnace and like put a lit match in there with my hand and like it would just like light up. So yeah, I'm probably not impressing you with the quality of experience that you want to be having with
With
our
the
new hot tub.
details for the stuff that
Yeah.
we love. Yeah, not. Well,
Inspiring a lot of confidence.
well, in relationship to this conversation, I feel like the next steps for us, which we could do, which I feel like we can easily do outside of this episode, is to talk about what's actually true for us. What are the different parts that are here that are yeses and nos and maybes, and how can we actually find out how to work together really well? That's a win-win for both of us. I have no question that we can do that.
Yeah, I'm appreciating the emotional kind of tone and the acceptance of what probably feels really frustrating for you. You've expressed your frustration and I hear it, I see it, and yet inside of the frustration I perceive a willingness for you to, as you said, stay in the conversation and make room for a process that probably takes longer than you want it to take. Probably feels like a really obvious thing for you, but obviously isn't obvious for parts of me. And I think the linchpin for me in shifting this, at least in this moment, feels like that I want my way of orienting toward you and toward us and toward our present lives together to be based on the present and seeing possibilities that go way beyond what I was able to do in the past when I was in more of a survival mode and honestly more of a sipping off as little oxygen as I could use in order to maintain a sense of having a supply left over. And now there's, to stay in the metaphor, there's plenty of oxygen, and so I don't need to live that way anymore. And I still think there's a little bit of work to do to bring all those parts on board, but I'm totally up for that. And I appreciate your patience.
Thank you. And what I appreciate about this conversation is that you're able to name parts of you that you and I weren't able to see before. I mean, parts are in your actions. They're very much not hiding from your actions, but they're hiding from the psychology, at least so far until now. And so I really appreciate you being able to make contact with those parts of you so that we can actually find a win-win for us rather than this kind of back and forth of frustration with each other. So thank you for being willing to take a deeper look there together.
I think I just want to narrate for our wonderful community, like you're doing with your experience, that over here, it seems like to me that the trick in doing that investigation that you're talking about inside of myself is to be able to maintain a state of curiosity about those parts of me that are not on board with the thing that I agreed to, and
Right.
not to go into some kind of shame or defensiveness space, which is really easy to go into. It's really easy to slide down that slope into, why are you so, you know, rigid or detailed? Yeah, exactly. And maybe you should change to accommodate my, whatever. So yeah, it's a practice, and it's not easy to get competent at the practice. It takes time and reps.
And it's co-created because if I came to you with WTF, Will, and to be honest, when you were away and I started to read the manual, I got very triggered. I really did. I was like steaming at the ears. Like steam was coming out of my ears. Like I wanted to like reach out to you. I wanted to be like WTF and I wanted to bring it in that way. A part of me wanted to bring it in that way. But then I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. That isn't necessary. It's not what I want to be doing. I'm overreacting. No biggie. I know that there's a part of Will that doesn't like to read manuals. I already knew that. I left this to him and kind of abdicated my own responsibility of making sure that the details were handled in the way that I wanted them to be handled. So, had I reached out to you in that moment, you probably would have said, F off. Like, why do you have to be so anal retentive about this? So it's co-created. I'm just trying to say how we
It's
handle it with
co-created.
each other
Yeah, it's
is really
co-created.
important. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for the conversation. So I'm just gonna reiterate for our listener what I felt like we did on in a simplified way. Not that we're doing it absolutely correct, but here are some ways to orient towards giving a partner feedback. Before you even start, are you able to have a conversation in a non-triggered way at the start of it at least? Do you feel like you can get there? Can you bring context to the conversation? Hey, I love you. I care about our relationship. I really want to do this better with you. Are you open to some feedback? Right? And then sharing the facts of what happened, the inarguable facts as much as you can. Make sure you're on the same page about that. And then it's about really getting each other's worlds and sharing experience and impact and what stories we're making up about all of it and really hearing each other and replicating back when we need to. And then finally, just how do we close the gap? How do we find alignment inside of our differences? And how do we get to win win, which I always believe is possible if each partner is willing. And I think I just want to close with something. When I feel that I'm getting feedback from people who really care about how it's being delivered, care about me, and that are for my success. I think that giving and receiving feedback can be a really potent way to actually really help somebody feel seen and heard and known and supported, no matter how hard the feedback might be. I know that I recently received some feedback from some ladies who were giving me feedback about how they experienced me and the way that they were able to do that with care and love and openness and staying in the conversation was like an element of being seen and known in a way that is deeply nourishing to me. It's like somebody giving me a life preserver from coming out of ways of being that I don't know that I'm in and being like, hey, we can help you do this differently if you want to. And to me, that's like, that's like the greatest gift of friendship and relationship in a certain way.
I am reminded of experiences in my life and where I learned a lot, and experiences where I maybe didn't learn as much. And there's a sense that I have in relationships, and especially here with you, where we're really connected and we're having a good time. And everything's fun and easy is great. And I certainly strive for more of that. There isn't much growth happening during those times that I can tell compared to conversations like this, where little things that are sneakily kind of hanging out and remaining in here, coping strategies that are out of date, uh, are coming forward to be known and integrated in the form of falling down on commitments, or doing things that create strife or conflict or friction between us. So there's this sense that when I'm in my right mind, I remember that these moments are the moments that help us grow and become more whole and more stronger in our relationship. It's not to say that there isn't growth in the good times, but it's a different thing, and it's not optional in my experience to have these other kinds of growth experiences inside of the ruptures and the discovery process of how much of us is really here.
Yeah. And if we can, as a couple, hold the discovery process and the ruptures and the conflict and this kind of feedback giving as, oh, we can find some gold in here. Like, wow, we just found some new parts of you. Yay. Let's let's get in there and figure out what those parts need so we don't have to have this ongoing frustration with each other. I think it's important that we can try to get to that position of loving what we find, even if it's hard.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's a common misconception that having a good relationship means having a relationship where there isn't much of these derails or conflicts that occur, rather than the view that we hold that it's really about the quality of your relationship is how you navigate these experiences, not whether they come up or not.
So well said. So thank you everybody for joining us. We hope that you've received some value out of watching us, listening to us navigate this feedback session. And if you are getting value out of this content, out of the art of we would so appreciate any comments, ratings, reviews that you can leave for us. We love your feedback. To be very clear, we want all of the good, bad, ugly, amazing feedback that you can give us. If you can deliver it in a really nice way, that's nice too. But we want it all. So please go to your favorite podcast platform or YouTube or anywhere else that you can find us, and please leave us your thoughts and comments. And otherwise, we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.